All right, guys, Wes here. Welcome back to the channel, and we just got some important updates to one of my most anticipated games for the rest of this year, Starfield, which, let's be honest, if you didn't know already, is the next sci-fi epic game from the legendary developer Bethesda Game Studios. Now, if you've been following my channel for a while, you know I'm a massive fan of BGS, and it's kind of baffling to me that the last single-player game that we got from BGS was all the way back with Fallout 4 in 2015, and now we are here, and we are less than 3 months away from the early access launch of Starfield. Now, if you haven't been keeping up with the game at all, we recently got a massive gameplay deep dive from the developers. During the Starfield Direct, they gave us our first real look at the game we're all going to be playing in September. But lucky for you guys, we have some interesting new developments to discuss, including hands-on gameplay impressions that I think you will all want to hear about. Now, before I get into the hands-on impressions, I'd like to first go over some major details that you might have missed during the Starfield Direct, and some of these details you will need to know for later on in the video, so listen up. So the first thing we have to notice is this right here is a screenshot of Earth. As you guys can see in the background, there's the St. Louis Arch, and it's on an Earth-like planet that's been completely demolished, and that is likely why we were space explorers. If you remember the movie Interstellar, it's that same concept. Earth got to the point where it was impossible to live on, so they had to travel out in space to find another planet, which that seems to be the same theme for this game. Another thing that I'd like to point out is Starfield is really going to be a survival game, and the fact that planets have different hazardous areas, and you essentially have to prepare yourself before you get to that planet because there are some debuffs that will likely kill you if you don't properly prepare. There's also survival elements like joint pain, soreness. I'm guessing you can get thirsty. You'll have to make sure you're constantly eating, resting, and just other typical stuff that you would find in a BGS game, as well as just modern day survival games. I think that's going to add a new dynamic to this game because it's not just going to be, hey, go to this planet, explore it, try to find some new materials, go to another planet and just rinse, repeat. You'll have to not only fight the elements, but you'll have to fight other enemies, creatures, and maybe even your sanity. But that's likely why we have companions like Vasco that will keep us more sane. Now, the next aspect that I would like to highlight is the new persuasion system, and it's going to be a point-based persuasion system similar to other Bethesda games, but I feel like this one is even more diverse and complex, so that's really exciting to see. Next up, if you actually look at this screenshot on one of the ships, there's a rage quit button, so who knows what that means. Maybe you could just self-destruct your ship. Maybe it's an ejection button. I'm not sure. Maybe you start to get boarded by enemies and then you're just like rage quit and just blow everybody up, even yourself. Now, speaking of boarding ships, there's going to be piracy that is in this game. The player jumped to the Alpha Centauri system, and then you can see right at the bottom where it's saying basically wait for scanning. There's no contraband on our current ship. The United Colonies will do a scan of your ship to make sure that there's any contraband. If there's not, then you can go to the planet. If there is, then of course you will likely be shot down. This adds a ton of possibilities. As you guys saw from later on in the video, you could board enemy ships, you could tag them for piracy and essentially fight them until you kill them and then take all of their stuff, put them on your ship, and then you can actually have a cargo bay. And I'm hoping you're going to be able to sell that stuff. Maybe there's missions where you have to steal other contraband and spice and then sell it, or just give it to somebody that you're doing it for. Now, sticking with the space theme, you're actually going to be able to tow other spaceships and possibly even act as a space freighter. And instead of being a pirate and, you know, having contraband, you have cargo for the United Colonies and you have to take it to resupply different planets. That would be a super cool system, and I'd love to see it. Now, in this screenshot right here, you can see the bounty system is present in this game. So let's say you go to a planet, you start shooting things up, and there is a possibility for you to have a bounty on areas and systems that are controlled by certain factions. Now, moving on to some other stuff like armor. I know there's been some concerns about the fact that armor might not be lootable in this game, but it is. There is some areas where armor wasn't lootable in the direct, but I think that might have been just an earlier build of the game. There's multiple other references where the armor is lootable. There's even legendary rarity systems. So just like every other good RPG, you're able to find legendary items. For instance, this incendiary calibrated deep mining space helmet, it has a incendiary effect where it has a 10% chance to ignite nearby attackers. So there's going to be a ton of variety whenever it comes to the armor. But if you're not feeling like using armor all the time, there is also something hidden in one of the menus, and it allows you to hide your armor. So let's say you're on your ship and you don't feel like having your armor or your spacesuit on, you could basically just remove it. Moving to the more planetary level, there's different star systems that have various levels, meaning you can't immediately go from system to system that's really far out and expect it to be easy mode still. There is different levels on star systems, so you kind of have to be careful. I'm sure you'll be able to land on them and explore them, but if you're under leveled, then it's kind of faffo. If you mess around, you're gonna find out. Now, there's also a skill that I'd like to talk about that lets you start an entire business. So maybe the materials you collect, you can actually use those and sell it. I'm sure once you go ahead and build an outpost, you're able to collect materials, and then from that, you can sell the content from your outpost outpost so you can make some passive income. Now on the Xbox store description, it actually confirms the ability to set up trade routes between outposts. It says right here you can explore planets and discover fauna, flora, and resources needed to craft something from medicine and food to equipment and weapons. You could build outposts and hire a crew to passively extract materials and establish cargo links to transfer resources between them. Invest these raw materials into research projects to unlock unique crafting recipes. Now let's go ahead and shift gears to the gameplay impressions with Ryan McCaffrey, who was able to play 1 hour of Starfield. I'd like to briefly thank Hazardor Gaming for putting together this Twitter thread that kind of goes over Ryan McCaffrey's opinions and thoughts on Starfield from his hands-on gameplay session. So starting things off, the Starfield gameplay was shown on the Xbox Series X. He said the scale and scope is insane, and from what they showed at the Direct and they played, that absolutely comes across. People are going to be playing Starfield for years, no joke. Next up, Ryan McCaffrey said that there's tons of background choices that can be changed. He didn't get a chance to experience the story. He was running around doing other stuff. There's no multiplayer, obviously. It's a single player game, and there's already an expansion pack that we'll talk about later. He said on ship's gravity takes effect, making combat fun. So let's say you're in 0G on your ship and you're in space. Using a gun like a shotgun that has a kick to it will essentially push you back. I can't wait to use it as like kind of a rocket jumping away, where I've got an enemy that's in front of me and I've got a shotgun. I turn around, I shoot the shotgun, and I get pushed forward to him, and then I blast him in the face. The melee axe combat is really fun according to Ryan McCaffrey, but honestly that makes sense. I've always liked doing melee combat in Bethesda games. There's really not much depth to it, but I just like the mindless hack and slash. The thread continues by saying it feels like No Man's Sky 2 with a Bethesda Game Studios role-playing story game on top of it, basically like a Fallout and Skyrim combined. Ryan McCaffrey then said that he's not sure if there's non-human races in the game. He doesn't know if there's going to be aliens or anything like that, but I think we're going to find some stuff out in the story that I'll talk about later, but I will give you a spoiler warning before I do that. Ryan says that the city feels like a mix of Oblivion and Mass Effect with tons of NPC and districts with subways. He said the handcrafted missions and location districts will take a lot of time for players, and it feels incredible, and the game doesn't feel shallow, which I think is a given. With only an hour into the game, it should feel like there's a gigantic amount of content still left to do, but that feeling is for most Bethesda Game Studios games. There would be some serious red flags if you felt like the game was shallow only an hour in. Now let's talk about the combat in Starfield. Now if you look at the initial 15-minute gameplay reveal of Starfield, and then you kind of compare it to what we saw during the Direct with the help of id Tech Software, Bethesda completely overhauled the combat system, and it looks insane. Like seriously guys, this is the most fluid FPS gameplay we have gotten from a Bethesda game ever. I thought they did a great job with Fallout 4's combat, but this looks 10 times better than that game. The combat in third person looks like a viable option as well. So rather than staying in the first person perspective like all other Bethesda Game Studio RPGs, I definitely see myself playing in first person for most of it, unless I'm doing exploring. At that point, then I'll likely be in third person. I like the fact that there's various other levels. You've got like the third person that we're used to with like, let's say The Witcher 3, and then you've got a third person that's like God of War that's a lot more up close and personal, and then of course there is first person. Also, can I just say that I love the fact that there is so much variety whenever it comes to combat. The guns that were shown off in the Starfield Direct look awesome, but even the melee weapons look really cool. Now speaking of combat, this kind of brings us to the next big teaser and a new combat ability, which was at the end of the Starfield Direct. The player straight up just used the Force, or as I personally like to call it, Space Roda. Now this is going to be a major gameplay mechanic for this game. The reason that we know it, or we can assume, is if you look at the menu in various sections of the game. During the Starfield Direct, you see a tab at the top of the radio menu that is not present in some shots, but it is present in others. I think the Force ability in Starfield will be similar to how shouts were a part of the core gameplay loop of Skyrim. Now the way that Skyrim explained the shouts was pivotal to the overall story, and I think the same thing will happen with Starfield. Prepare for some story speculation, so go to the next chapter of the video where I talk about 30 FPS if you don't want to hear this portion. So from what I gathered with Starfield, we start our journey as a mining worker, and we come across an artifact that when we touched it, the artifact or something knocked us out, leaving us unconscious. This is likely how we gained our first ability. Now where does this artifact originate is my next big question. Well, I think this is the first real sign for Constellation that intelligent life really is out there, and those beings can manipulate gravity. Not to go down a super rabbit hole, but if you look at the artifacts, they all connect and create a circular object. Maybe when we find all of the artifacts, we will have access to an energy source or something, maybe a portal, possibly a rift, or just something that allows us to travel across the galaxy even quicker. Maybe it's like a portal to where the intelligent life is located. It's hard saying, but I expect this game to start off somewhat realistic and eventually get turned upside down at a certain part of the story, and I look forward to finding out. I also cannot cannot wait to see what kind of skill tree this force ability has, because if it's anything like the shouts from Skyrim, it's about to get insane. Now, shortly after the Starfield Direct, in an interview with Ryan McCaffrey, Starfield director Todd Howard, the legendary God Howard, confirmed that the game will be played at 4K 30 FPS on Series X and 1440p at 30 FPS on the Series S. This, of course, has sparked quite a bit of controversy within the gaming community, and it basically turned it into a console war overnight. But the question I'm seeing asked quite a bit by a few people is, should we be concerned that it's 30 FPS, and is Starfield the real deal? Well, first off, if you plan on playing Starfield, you're going to either need an Xbox, a PC, a smart device for cloud gaming, but if you have a PC, you won't have to worry about the game playing at 30. Granted, the verdict is still out on the PC's optimization, but if you plan on playing on console, it's a bit of a tougher sell. Do I think it's a complete deal breaker when a game is 30 FPS on console? No, not really. It all depends on how the game plays. For instance, with Gotham Knights being 30 FPS, it wasn't smooth at all, and it genuinely made me feel nauseous due to the fast movement, low frames, and motion blur. I played the game in its entirety and I thought the story was solid, but still, in that instance, 30 FPS was definitely a deal breaker, and that's how I reviewed the game. Now, if we rewind to 2018 with the release of Red Dead Redemption 2, I played that game at 30 FPS and I thought it was one of the greatest single player games ever, so in that instance, 30 FPS was perfectly fine. Starfield is a vast game, but unlike previous attempts at procedurally generated space adventures, it has a giant Bethesda Game Studios RPG in it. If the game releases and it's as wide as an ocean and deep as a puddle on top of playing at 30 FPS, I will be very disappointed. But if it's as in-depth as the Starfield Direct portrayed the game to be, I have no problem playing this game at 30 FPS on console. Obviously, I'm the outlier here due to the fact that I'll be playing the game mostly on PC, and my rig is good enough to play even the most unoptimized games at solid FPS. Yes, I'm looking at you, Jedi Survivor, so I'm not really too worried in terms of FPS on PC. However, I am a bit concerned at the fact that I don't know if the team at BGS is going to be able to pull this game off. It all looks amazing, but that's what's being marketed to us. So they obviously want the game to look amazing on paper and even on video. If you look at previous attempts at games like this, it's been quite a disaster. However, No Man's Sky turned things around and is now considered one of the best space games out there, as long as Starfield has a great story, addicting gameplay loop, as well as consistent performance. I'll be playing this game for years. Not to mention the fact that once this game gets into the hands of mod developers, they'll handle the rest. So yes, I do think Starfield is the real deal. Now, will it win Game of the Year? Likely not. I'm guessing that crown will go to Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, but I definitely think if the developers land this game, it will be nominated. I really hope it releases in a good state, which I think it will, mainly due to the fact that this game has been in development for 10 years at this point, and Microsoft has their entire QA team playing Starfield and making sure that the bugs and other kinks are sorted out before it launches. Microsoft's advanced technology group is helping with the optimization of Starfield as well, so that all sounds like it's great news. However, I think we should all be cautiously optimistic whenever it comes to this game. We have seen Bethesda Game Studios underdeliver in the past. Granted, Todd Howard has never released a bad game where he was the director. You guys are probably typing Fallout 76 in the comments right now, but he wasn't the director of that game. He was the executive producer and talking head, which means yes, he still does bear quite a bit of blame, but it does make me less concerned that Starfield is going to completely flop. I don't see a way this game releases and not be a massive hit like other BGS titles. Maybe not as much as, let's say, Elder Scrolls 6 or a new Fallout game, but I truly think the Starfield Direct did quite a bit of selling, especially amongst the people who have never played a BGS game or the ones who got burned with Fallout 76. Bethesda seriously needs a redemption arc here, and I think the work that they're putting in on Starfield is going to give them that. But hey, if that doesn't work, then BGS fans are going to be eating really good, and I think that's a W regardless. We are going to be hearing and seeing industry previews for Starfield in the coming weeks and months, so prepare for that. I'm going to be breaking it all down on the channel, so definitely stay tuned. But yeah, guys, that's going to wrap it up with this video. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe with your notifications turned on. Also, we are about 2K subscribers away from the PlayStation 5 giveaway, so if you want a chance to win that, check the pinned comment for all of those details on how you can enter. Thank you all for watching. This has been Wes, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.